The thermostat in the hallway was doing that clicking thing again. It's mid-November in upstate New York, so it's freezing and my heating bill is honestly insane. I stood there for a second, just staring at the digital screen. We have this huge house, 4 bedrooms, a finished basement, and for what? We barely even talk at dinner. ID spent the whole morning at the office. I'm an estate lawyer, which is basically just professional babysitting for adults who hate each other and want their parents' money. Today was a total mess. Some woman died and left everything to her porcelain cat collection, and the kids were literally fighting over them. Just typical. On the way home, traffic was backed up for miles because of some wreck near the shopping center. I spent 20 minutes just sitting there thinking about my 401k. And if I'd actually called the guy to clean the gutters before the snowfall hits. Oh, and I think I forgot to buy milk. I kept remembering that as I sat in traffic. Mark was in the kitchen when I got in. He didn't even look up from his tablet. He does that, just kind of exists in the room without actually being there. He finally asked me, "Did you ever get a hold of the landscaper? Because the hoa is breathing down my neck about the south side again." He still wasn't looking at me. "I did," I told him. "He's coming Thursday." "Good, that was it. No, how was your day?" "Nothing. I had a killer headache from work, but whatever." I just went into the laundry room and started a load of towels. We used to actually have plans, like Italy or a cottage by the lake. But I don't know, it just stopped. We just focused on the house and the neighbors, and I guess I just became the person who handles the insurance and the birthdays. The one who makes sure things actually work. After dinner, we had salmon and asparagus. Didn't say Mucci realized I couldn't find the homeowner's insurance folder. I had to get a copy to the bank by tomorrow morning. Mark said he put it in his desk in the study, so I went in there. I started digging through the bottom drawers, and it was just cables. Everywhere, random chargers from like 10 years ago, HDMI cords. He refuses to throw anything away. I spent like 5 minutes just trying to untangle some cord from a rubber band, and I just got really annoyed. Like, why am I doing this at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday? Anyway, I pushed some old tax returns aside and felt something. It was a small black leather portfolio. Not a work folder, just something small with a cheap little brass lock. I stood there for a minute. For a second. Mark isn't really a secret person. He's more of an organize everything person. I almost didn't open it. I don't know, I guess I was just tired of everything being so quiet. Mark was in the living room watching some documentary about Rome. He was just zoned out in front of the TV like usual. I didn't have a key, but the lock was cheap. I used a silver letter opener from the desk. His parents gave it to us for our wedding, and I just poked at it until it clicked open. It wasn't bank accounts or anything. It was photos, a woman I'd never seen. Curly hair, looks like she was actually happy in the pictures. There were these notes too, on hotel stationery from places we've never been. I couldn't believe it. I was just standing there in the middle of all that junk looking at them. I just closed it and shoved it back. I couldn't even breathe for a second. I didn't want him to know yet. I walked back into the living room and he asked if I found the papers. "No," I said. I couldn't find them. I didn't sleep at all the next night. I just lay there in bed listening to Grayson breathe. He sounded so peaceful, which honestly just pissed me off. Either he didn't have a single thing to worry about, or he's just that good at faking it. I couldn't stop thinking about those photos way that woman was looking at him. I don't think he's looked at me like that in a decade. The next morning was just normal. Which was the worst part. The house was freezing because the furnace was acting up again, and I spent like 10 minutes fighting with the thermostat before it finally kicked in. Grayson was in the kitchen, just sipping coffee and scrolling through his phone. He looked totally fine. It actually made me feel sick. Like, how do you just look that normal when you have a whole other life hidden in a leather folder? "Coffee tastes burnt," he said without even looking up. "Did you change the filter?" No," I said. I stood there for a minute with my mug staring at him. I wanted to scream or throw the cup at the wall, but I didn't. I just had this heavy, sinking feeling in my stomach. I saw the folder. Grayson. He didn't even flinch. He didn't drop his phone or anything. He just slowly looked up at me, looking confused. "What folder?" "The black leather one, in your study, with the photos and the hotel notes." He sighed. Not like he was guilty, but like he was being patient with a toddler. He put his phone on the counter and stepped toward me. Paisley, what are you talking about? I don't have a black leather folder in my study. I just blinked. I opened it last night. I used the letter opener. I saw the pictures. Grayson stopped and gave me this look, the kind of look you give someone who's having a total breakdown. Babe, seriously? You're exhausted. You're starting to imagine things because of work. I haven't even used that letter opener in years. For a second, I actually doubted myself. I knew what I saw. We could still see the woman's curly hair and the hotel stationery, but he was so calm about it. It was like the floor was disappearing under me. I'm not crazy, I said. My voice sounded way smaller than I wanted it to. I didn't say you were crazy, he said in that soothing, condescending tone he uses when he wants me to just drop it. I'm just saying, you're burned out. Maybe you're dreaming. You've been working 14-hour days and you're barely sleeping. I think you just need a weekend away. Maybe that spa in the Catskills? He reached out to touch my shoulder, and I stepped back. He didn't get mad, he just looked sad for me. He spent the next 20 minutes telling me I probably imagined it, or maybe I saw some old case files and got them mixed up. He just kept talking until I actually wondered if I'd sleepwalked into the office and hallucinated a mistress. He never raised his voice. He just kept saying how worried he was. By the time I left for work, I was just vibrating. I don't even remember if I locked the front door. The drive to the office was a blur. Once I got there, I couldn't focus on anything. I had a meeting with these two siblings who were screaming at each other over their dad's watch collection, and I just sat there watching them. I guess I just realized Grayson wasn't just lying. He was trying to rewrite reality. I'm a lawyer. I deal with liars every day. I know the difference between a mistake and someone just manipulating the facts. When I got home that evening, I didn't go to the kitchen. I didn't even ask how his day was. I went straight to the study and opened the bottom drawer. The folder was gone. He moved it. The second I mentioned it, he scrubbed the evidence. He probably thought he won because he made me doubt myself, but it actually just proved everything. If there was nothing to hide, he wouldn't have moved it. I sat in his chair and just looked at the empty spot. For years, I've been the one handling everything, the 401k, the property taxes, making sure the VAC got serviced. I've spent my whole life being the stable one while Grayson just existed. And then it hit me that I didn't actually know where our money was going. We have a joint account for the house and separate savings, but Grayson handles the main investments. I trusted him. He was the organized one, right? But sitting there, I started thinking about those business trips to Albany back in September, October. He said he had these seminars and had to stay overnight 3 times in 1 month. I thought it was weird for such a short drive, but I didn't ask. I just pressed his shirts. I opened my laptop and logged into the joint portal. I scrolled through the last 2 years. Most of it was normal mortgage, utilities, Target, a few dinners at that steakhouse the Ho people like, but I started looking for patterns. I searched for hotel and lodge. Nothing in the joint account. He was too smart for that. He wasn't using shared money, but then I remembered the secondary investment account, the one for the kids' college. He has the main login. I only have view access for the quarterly reports. I spent the next 3 hours digging. I used some stuff I've learned from the forensic accountants I work with, looking for small recurring transfers that wouldn't trigger a red flag. I found them. Every month for 3 years, what 200 went from the investment account to a checking account I'd never seen before. It was in his name, but at a different bank. I felt this weird sense of calm, not happy, just solid. The talking circles stopped working the moment I saw the numbers. Numbers don't lie to you and tell you that you're just stressed from work. I heard the front door open, and Grayson was humming some song as he walked in. I quickly closed the laptop and leaned back, pretending to look through some old files. "Still in the office, honey?" he asked, leaning into the room. He was smiling, that same supportive smile from this morning. "You really need to wind down. Come help me pick a movie." I looked at him, and for the first time in 20 years, I didn't see my husband. I just saw a stranger who happened to live in my house. A man who spent years building a lie while I spent years building a home for him. "I'll be there in a minute," I said. "Just need to finish this." "Don't work too hard," he said, and then he just walked away. I stayed in that chair for a long time. I thought about the house, 4 bedrooms, the basement, the way it looks to the neighbors. It felt like a movie set. I thought about the partnerships I passed up to handle the kids' schedules, the way I just made myself smaller to fit into whatever space he left for me. I didn't cry. I was too tired. Instead, I opened a notebook and wrote down the secret account number, the dates, the name of the hotel from the stationery. I spent the rest of the night acting. I sat on the sofa, watched some boring movie, and let him put his arm around me. I didn't pull away, I just lay there doing the math. I've spent 10 years finding hidden assets for dead people and not letting my own husband hide a bank account from me. Grayson thought he was playing a psychology game, trying to make me doubt my own eyes. He forgot that my actual job is evidence. The next morning, I woke up before him. I went to the kitchen and made coffee. I didn't even check the filter. I just drank it and wondered if the landscaper was still coming on Thursday. I decided it didn't really matter. The next few days were a total blur. I honestly don't even remember half of them. I just kept playing the part of the stressed out wife, you know? I made the coffee, complained about the drafts in the house, and just listened to Grayson drone on about some neighborhood watch meeting. It was surreal. I'd be nodding along while he complained about the neighbor's hedge, but in my head, I was just spiraling over how much money he'd stolen from the kids' college funds. I didn't even have that big explosion of anger I expected. It was more like this cold knot in my chest that wouldn't go away, even when I was sleeping. I spent my lunch breaks at the office using my firm's databases. I'm an estate lawyer, so I know how to find the stuff people try to hide. I started with the name on that checking account, Logan B. Hernandez. I've known him as Grayson for 22 years. We used to joke that Grayson sounded like some guy in a fancy New York colonial, while Logan sounded like someone who sold insurance in a strip mall. I had no idea he was using the name he ditched to build a whole second life. I stumbled across a rental agreement for a place in Albany. It wasn't some fancy penthouse, just a normal 2 bedroom brick building near the university. The lease was in his name, and the cosigner was a woman named Elena Vance. Elena. I just stared at the name on the screen for a while. I wondered if she even knew I existed. I did the thing I tell my clients 1,000 times not to do, and I went down a social media rabbit hole. You don't find the truth on Instagram, you just find the highlights, but there she was. Curly hair, younger than me, maybe early 40s, with this really genuine smile. There were photos of them at a vineyard and hiking in the Adirondacks. They were doing all the stuff we used to do. Or the stuff I'd been begging him to do. I remember mentioning a trip to the Adirondacks back in October. I'd found this cute bed and breakfast for the fall leaves, but he told me he was too bogged down with quarterly reports to even think about it. He looked me right in the eye and said maybe we could do it next year. I just closed my laptop and sat there. My office was so quiet. I looked at the family photo on my desk, the kids at the Grand Canyon 10 years ago, and I had this sudden urge to just smash the glass. But I didn't, it felt too dramatic. I tried to get back to my files, but I couldn't focus. I spent 20 minutes staring at a paragraph about tax exemptions, reading the same sentence over and over. I eventually just went to the break room to get some water. The break room was a disaster. Someone had put a tuna sandwich in the microwave, and the smell was everywhere. I tried to get a paper towel, but the dispenser jammed and I had a literal meltdown. I yanked on the lever and a huge clump of towels just ripped out and flew all over the floor. I stood there for a minute looking at them, feeling this weird, huge amount of frustration. I wanted to scream at the towels. I wanted to scream at the smell of fish. I stood there for a minute for a second, then picked them up and threw them away. When I got home that evening, Grayson was in the kitchen, humming to himself and pouring wine. He looked so relaxed. Like he had everything figured out. The vac guy called, he said, without looking at me. He says the heat pump is shot. It's going to be about $3,000 to replace it. 3,000? I said. Yeah. I'll just pull it from the emergency fund. The emergency fund. The one I'd managed for 10 years to make sure we had a cushion. He said it so casually, like he hadn't been stealing from the kids' money to pay for an apartment in Albany. Okay, I told him. I didn't ask where the money was or why he was so calm. I just went upstairs and unpacked my bag. The next few weeks were a blur. I hired a private investigator, a former colleague's husband who does domestic surveillance. I didn't want a big firm, I wanted someone discreet. I paid him in cash, taking it out of my own savings. Little by little, the reports came in on Fridays. He was in Albany every Tuesday and Thursday. No seminars, no client meetings. He went straight to the apartment on State Street. He bought groceries there. He even had a second phone, a cheap burner, hidden in the lining of his briefcase. The worst part wasn't even the cheating. It was the small things. My pie sent me photos of them at a bookstore. He was holding her hand and whispering in her ear, and she was laughing. It was this look of total intimacy. The kind of intimacy you have when you don't have to worry about woos, picking up the kids from soccer, or if the property taxes are paid. It felt like I was doing all the heavy lifting in our life just so he could go play some fantasy version of himself with Alina. I had this dull ache in my jaw that wouldn't go away. I started waking up at 3 a.m., just staring at the ceiling and listening to him snore. I wondered how many times he'd come home from Albany and kiss me on the cheek while smelling like her soap. I wondered if he felt guilty, or if he just saw me as something useful like the dishwasher. I didn't tell him I knew. I didn't even hint at it. I just got more efficient. I started moving my own assets and contacted a friend of mine who does aggressive divorces. We started building the file. Bank statements, pie photos, hotel receipts. I wanted it to be airtight. One night we were in the living room. The new heat pump was finally in, so the house was actually warm. We were watching a travel show about Japan. We should go there, Grayson said, leaning back. Maybe in a few years, once the kids are out of the house. I looked at him. He was wearing his favorite old sweater with the hole in the elbow that I'd offered to fix a dozen times. He looked so familiar, but also like a total stranger. I don't think he'll be interested in Japan in a few years, I said. He frowned. Why not? I don't know, I'm just not really feeling Japan anymore, I told him. Then I turned back to the TV. He didn't push it. He was so used to me just agreeing with him that he didn't even notice my tone. He didn't see that I was studying him. The way he shifted his weight, the way he avoided eye contact when he talked about work. Anyway, fast forward to late December, right before the holidays. That's when I found the last piece. I was looking for a stapler in the study, which was a nightmare, because he decided to organize the desk by putting everything into these random plastic bins that didn't actually fit on the shelves. I had to move 3 bins of old magazines and electronics just to find the stapler. I ended up knocking over a pen cup while I was trying to clear some space. While I was cleaning up the pens, I saw a small notebook tucked in the back of one of the bins. I opened it, and my heart didn't even race. It just slowed down. It was a list of expenses. Not just for the apartment, but everything. He was tracking the money he took from the college fund, but he was also planning something else. There were notes about a trust he was setting up in Alina's name. He wasn't just having an affair, he was moving assets. He was preparing for a future that didn't include me, using the kids' money. He had the dates of his visits, the gifts he bought her, the transfers. He'd even written notes about things she liked, specific chocolates, a certain wine. He put more thought into her preferences than he had into our marriage in a decade. I closed the notebook and put it back exactly where I found it. I didn't feel like crying. I just felt clear. I went into the kitchen and poured a glass of water. I looked out the window at the snow falling. All the houses looked the same: neat lawns, expensive shutters. I wondered how many other women in this neighborhood were doing the same thing I was. I thought about the woman with the curly hair. I didn't really hate her. She was just another person being lied to. She probably thought he truly loved her. She didn't know he was a thief, or that his success was being paid for by his children's education. I went back to the study and called my lawyer. Are you sure? She asked. Once we file, there's no going back. He's going to fight. Let him fight, I said. I spent 20 years making sure everything in this house works. I think it's time I did that for myself. I hung up and went back into the living room. Grayson was still there, scrolling through his phone. Hey, he said, looking up. I was thinking about ordering tea for dinner. Does that sound okay? I looked at him. Really looked at him. I saw the way he smiled, and I felt a flicker of something. Not love, not hate, just relief. The mystery was over. I had the evidence. Yeah, Thee's fine. I sat down next to him and let him put his arm around me. I didn't pull away. I just sat there watching the snow, counting down the days. I wondered for a second if I should buy new curtains for the bedroom, but then I realized it didn't matter. I wouldn't be living here much longer. Upstaney in January is the worst. Gray skies and road salt everywhere. It leaves these white streaks on the driveway and all over my coats. I have this big two-story house that we spent 20 years paying off, but it always feels freezing. Even with the new heat pump, there are cold spots in the hallways that make me shiver on my way to the bathroom. For the first few weeks of the year, I was basically pretending. I'd wake up, make coffee, kiss Grayson on the cheek, and go to work. I was actually pretty good at it. I've spent so many years dealing with his moods and keeping things smooth that pretending everything was fine felt like another chore. Like vacuuming or remembering to buy the specific almond milk he likes. My life was split in two. There was the wife part where I'd nod while he complained about the hoa and the snow removal land. Then there was the other part. The other part happened in a beige office in a professional plaza about 20 miles away. That's where Sarah was. She's a divorce lawyer who deals with wealthy people and people who hide money. She wasn't the type to ask how I was feeling. She wanted the paperwork. The accountant is almost done, Sarah told me during our second meeting. She was drinking tea out of a styrofoam cup. He found the second account. He tracked the money from the kids' college funds into that Albany rental. It's wasteful dissipation of assets. We have leverage here. I sat there looking at a spreadsheet. It was weird seeing my marriage as a bunch of cells in Excel. Joint expenses, hidden transfers, undisclosed assets. Seeing the numbers, I don't know, it changed things. He didn't feel like the man I'd slept next to for 20 years anymore. He looked like a scammer. I remembered the first house we bought. It was a tiny, drafty cape that smelled like old cigarettes. We were so broke back then. I remember splitting one order of fries at a diner because we were saving every cent for the down payment. I figured we were building a stable life together. I assumed the organized calendars and the 401ks were something I was doing for both of us. But looking at those spreadsheets, I realized I'd been doing all the heavy lifting, while Grayson lived a whole other life with someone else. Sarah told me to move my separate savings into a protected account. Not enough to look like I was raiding the joint funds, but enough so I wouldn't be stranded if he froze everything the second he got served. So I did that. I spent my lunch breaks at the bank, moving small amounts of money. It was kind of a rush every time I clicked transfer. It was the first time in years I'd made a choice about my own life without wondering if it would piss him off. One Tuesday, I came home, and Grayson was lounging on the sofa reading. He has this way of taking up a lot of space. I stood in the doorway for a second, watching him. He didn't even look up. "Hey," he said, "did you see the HOA email? They're complaining about the shrubs in the back again. I'll handle it," I said. "Thanks, babe. You're a lifesaver." I didn't smile. I went into the kitchen and started putting the groceries away. I stood there with the eggs, feeling like an idiot. Did he think I was the stable one? Or did he think I was too tired to notice everything falling apart? I started noticing things I'd ignored for a long time. The way he'd tilt his phone away when a text came in. The way he'd suddenly start talking about the weather if I asked about his day. He wasn't even trying that hard to hide it anymore. He assumed I wouldn't care. Around mid-January, I almost snapped. We were having dinner chicken and broccoli, the same thing we've eaten a million times. The silence was awkward as hell. I wanted to throw the broccoli at him and tell him I knew about Alina and the apartment and the money. But I remembered what Sarah said. Wait until the evidence is airtight. Don't tip him off. So I took a bite of the chicken. It was really dry. I chewed it slowly and asked if he wanted to see a movie this weekend. "Sure," he said. "Whatever you want." He always said that. Whatever you want. It sounded like he was being easygoing, but he was actually opting out. He let me make every single Chuth movies, the vacations, the paint for the guest room so he never had to be responsible for any of it. I figured he trusted me. He was probably just lazy. A few days later, I was cleaning out the junk drawer. Ours was full of dead batteries, old menus, and keys that didn't open anything. I was looking for a screwdriver to fix the dishwasher handle, but the drawer was such a mess. I dumped the whole thing on the counter. I spent 10 minutes staring at a pile of plastic. I found a pen from a bank that went out of business in 2008 and three different Allen wrenches. Then I tried to stretch one of the old rubber bands, and it snapped, hitting me right in the finger. I stood there breathing hard for a minute, feeling this sudden wave of anger. I wanted to rip the cabinets out of the wall. Then I sighed, swept the junk back in, and decided to call a repairman for the dishwasher. It's weird. I could handle the cheating and the theft, but a rubber band almost made me lose it. As February started, the legal stuff reached the final phase. Sarah and I spent hours on the statement of assets. I had to be meticulous, every piece of furniture, every investment, exactly how much Grayson had diverted to his other life. I realized the affair with Elena Wands, even the main thing, it was the arrogance. He thought I was just there, like a piece of furniture he didn't have to take care of. I started spending more time at the office, telling him I had a heavy caseload. Actually, I was meeting with a real estate agent. I didn't want the big house. I didn't want the cold hallways or the hoa. I wanted something smaller. Something cheaper to heat, something that was mine. One evening, Grayson tried to be romantic. He brought home Lily's me favorite and some wine. He gave me a hug that lasted a little too long. I feel like we've been distant, he whispered. I want us to get back to how we were. I didn't move. I felt the rough fabric of his sweater. I didn't feel love, just a kind of pity. He thought a bouquet of flowers could fix this. I'm stressed with work, Grayson, I said. My voice sounded flat. You know how it is. I do, he said, smiling. Maybe we should take a trip somewhere warm. I remembered the trip to the Adirondacks he'd canceled in October. I remembered Elena, that sounds lovely, I lied. Let's look at some dates. I spent the rest of the night acting. I let him pour the wine. I let him talk about some project at work. I nodded and smiled, while in my head, I was counting down the days until the process server showed up at the door. The more I detached, the more I could see the exit. I imagined a morning where I didn't have to manage another adult's life. I thought about my kids there in college now. I'm going to tell them. The final meeting with Sarah was a rainy Tuesday in late February. It was freezing and misty. Everything is signed, Sarah said, sliding a folder over. The filing is ready. I need your final okay to serve the papers. Once he's served, the temporary orders kick in. He can't move money or sell assets without the court's permission. I looked at the line. I thought about the last 20 years. The holidays, the photos, the way I'd spent 2 decades doing whatever he wanted so he wouldn't start a fight. I thought about the woman in Albany and how he told me I was just stressed I signed it. I didn't hesitate. I didn't feel a huge wave of sadness or triumph. I felt done. Well, serve him tomorrow morning, Sarah said. Do you want to be in the house or somewhere else? I'll be in the house, I told her. I want to see his face when it happens. I drove home in silence. I stopped at Target on the way, not because I needed anything, but because I wanted to do something normal. I walked through the aisles and bought a set of towels, bright turquoise. Grayson would have hated them because they were too loud for the bathroom. When I got home, the house was warm. Grayson was in the kitchen making a sandwich. Hey, he said. How was your day? It was productive, I said. I went upstairs and packed a small bag. Just the things that were actually mine. My journals, some books, the jewelry from my mother. I left the expensive vases and the linens. I didn't want any of it. That night, we went to bed like always. He turned off the lamp, rolled over, and was asleep in minutes. I lay there, stared at the ceiling. I listened to the house creak and the wind against the windows. I thought about the way the house was built a bit crooked, and the leak in the basement wet ignored for 3 years. I didn't sleep much. I waited. I wondered if he'd try to twist the story again, or if he'd finally be honest. I realized I didn't actually care. His version of reality didn't matter anymore. I had my own now, and mine was backed up by a forensic accountant. At 6 a.m., the alarm went off. I went to the kitchen and made coffee. For once, I didn't even check the filter. I poured a cup and sat at the table, watching the gray light come through the windows. I heard Grayson stir upstairs. I heard him walking toward the bathroom, humming some song I didn't recognize. I sat there sipping my coffee. The house was still cold in the corners, and there was still salt on the driveway. I looked at the clock. It was almost time. I sat there, listening to the coffee maker drip, and waited for the doorbell to ring.